Hello, and welcome back to the Sleepy Darwin. Whether you're here to let your mind quietly wander through the slow dance of natural selection, or simply to drift off while pondering the gentle mysteries of life itself, you've found the perfect place to rest. Tonight, we're exploring a question that whispers at the edges of tomorrow. What happens when intelligence learns to design itself? And how might that reshape the very path of evolution? This is a story that begins millions of years ago with the first spark of consciousness, wins through Darwin's patient observations, and arrives at our doorstep with algorithms that can already outthink us in ways both beautiful and bewildering. We'll drift through concepts of artificial selection, digital organisms, and the curious possibility that evolution might be about to take a most unexpected turn. Before we begin this gentle journey into the future of life itself, if you find these sleepy explorations soothing, a like and subscribe would mean the world to me and to all the patient algorithms learning to dream. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Fair warning, I hope this isn't so fascinating that it keeps you wide awake, but if it does, at least you'll drift off a little wiser about the quiet revolution happening in laboratories and servers around the globe. So, settle in, let your breathing slow, and let's explore how intelligence itself might be evolving. Let's begin our sleepy journey by drifting back, way back, to a time when Earth was young and restless, spinning in the darkness with no idea what wonders it would someday cradle. Picture, if you can, our planet 4 billion years ago, a world of volcanic breath and meteor kisses, where the very air would poison us, and the oceans were more like a cosmic soup, bubbling with possibility. It's here, in this alien cradle, that evolution began its longest, most patient dance, not with grand gestures or dramatic flourishes, but with the tiniest whisper of chemistry molecules bumping into each other in the primordial dark, occasionally finding ways to stick together that were just a little bit more interesting than before. You see, evolution isn't the hurried, anxious thing we sometimes imagine it to be. It's not Darwin's finches frantically changing their beaks overnight. No. Evolution is more like the universe's most patient composer, writing a symphony that's been playing for nearly 4 billion years. The same beautiful fundamental songs survive, reproduce, adapt, but played with endless, gorgeous variations. Imagine the first self-replicating molecule, floating alone in the ancient ocean. It didn't know it was making history. It didn't even know it existed. It simply did what chemistry allowed it to do. It made a copy of itself, and then another, and sometimes, just sometimes, those copies weren't quite perfect. A tiny mistake here, a small change there. Most of these accidents led nowhere, dissolved back into the cosmic soup. But occasionally, just occasionally, a mistake turned out to be better. This is natural selection at its most fundamental level. Not survival of the fittest in tooth and claw, but survival of the slightly more interesting, the accidentally more stable, the randomly just a bit better, at making copies in a world that's constantly trying to tear everything apart. Evolution became life's gentle editor, working with infinite patience. Picture an editor with all the time in the universe, making tiny corrections to an ever-growing manuscript. A word changed here, a sentence restructured there. Most edits improve nothing, some make things worse, but every so often, a small change makes the whole story flow just a little more beautifully. Over millions and millions of years, these molecular accidents began to compose themselves into something we might recognize as the first stirrings of life. Simple cells floating in ancient seas, learning the art of photosynthesis, literally eating sunlight, transforming starfire into the chemistry of existence. Can you imagine anything more poetic? Life learning to dine on the very light that travels across impossible distances just to reach us. And the editing continued. Cells learned to work together, forming colonies, then communities, then complex organisms. The ocean filled with the strangest creatures, things that look like living flowers, like architectural experiments, like nature's first attempts at sculpture, trilobites skittering across seafloors that knew no footsteps, massive ferns creating Earth's first forests in a world where no bird had ever sung. Time moved like honey. Continents drifted across the globe with the patience of dreams. Species appeared, flourished, and faded into fossil memories, each one contributing its verse to evolution's endless poem. The dinosaurs had their thunderous chapter, 160 million years of scales and songs we'll never hear. They ruled a world so different from ours that it might as well be another planet, and yet their bones rest beneath our cities. Their ancient carbon helps fuel our cars. Then came the mammals, small and quick and warm-blooded, hiding in the shadows of giants until the cosmic lottery gave them their chance. A meteor the size of Manhattan, traveling faster than thought, rewrote Earth's story in a single catastrophic moment. The age of dinosaurs ended not with evolution's gentle editing, but with geology's violent punctuation mark. But even catastrophe becomes part of evolution's patient dance. The mammals emerged from their hiding places, blinking in the sunlight of a changed world. They began their own journey of endless variation, some returning to the sea to become whales, others taking to the air as bats, still others growing large and diverse across the recovering continents. And through it all, through every extinction and explosion of diversity, evolution maintained its steady rhythm, not rushing, not panicking, not trying to achieve any particular goal, just dancing. The same fundamental steps, variation, selection, inheritance, repeated with the reliability of heartbeats, the consistency of seasons, the patience of geological time. Pause with me for a moment and try to imagine this kind of patience. The patience of mountains, but even slower. The patience of stars, but more creative. 4 billion years of tiny changes, each generation slightly different from the last. Each species exploring new ways to make a living in an ever-changing world. Evolution has had enough time to try almost everything. Creatures that glow in the dark, others that navigate by echolocation, plants that eat animals, animals that garden plants, life that thrives in boiling hot springs, and others that bloom in Antarctic ice. The patient dance has choreographed solutions we never could have imagined, using nothing but time, chance, and the simple rule that whatever works well enough gets to try again tomorrow. And the most beautiful part? This ancient dance is still happening. Right now, as you listen to these words, evolution continues its patient work. Bacteria in your own body are adapting to new conditions. Plants in your garden are slowly adjusting to this year's weather. Somewhere in the ocean, a whale is carrying mutations that might, in 100,000 years, help its descendants thrive in ways we can't predict. We are not watching evolution from the outside. We are evolution, still dancing, still changing, still writing new verses in the universe's longest poem. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you carry in your cells the genetic wisdom of 4 billion years of patient experimentation, 4 billion years of life learning how to live. But something remarkable happened along the way, something that would eventually change the very nature of evolution's dance. Among all those patient experiments, all those tiny variations, life accidentally stumbled upon something unprecedented. Let's drift a little deeper into this ancient mystery, shall we? Because there's something almost magical about how evolution actually works, and I don't mean magical in the sense of supernatural, but magical in the way that a simple rule, applied over vast amounts of time, can create complexity so beautiful it takes your breath away. At the heart of evolution's patient dance lies what might seem like the most unlikely hero: randomness itself. Pure, undirected, beautiful accident. Every time a cell divides, every time DNA copies itself to create a new organism, there's a chance, a tiny, tiny chance, that something will go slightly wrong. A cosmic ray from deep space might zip through a dividing cell and flip a molecular switch. A chemical bond might form in an unexpected way. An enzyme might pause for just a moment too long. These aren't design flaws. They're features. Evolution's creative spark comes from embracing beautiful mistakes. Picture DNA as life's most patient librarian, keeping careful notes for billions of years. But imagine this librarian working by candlelight, in a room that's constantly trembling from earthquakes, while occasionally meteors crash through the ceiling. Every time she copies a page, there's a small chance she'll make an error. Most of the time, these errors don't matter. A comma becomes a semicolon. A word gets slightly misspelled, but remains readable. But sometimes, a copying error changes the meaning entirely. And very rarely, that change makes the story more interesting, more useful, more likely to survive in a world that's constantly testing every living thing. This is the beautiful inefficiency of evolution, like a million monkeys with typewriters, but with all the time in the universe to work. Most of what they type is nonsense, gets discarded, forgotten, but given enough time, enough tries, enough random variations, occasionally one of those monkeys accidentally types a line of Shakespeare. Except in evolution's case, those accidental masterpieces aren't literary, they're living. They're new proteins that fold in useful ways. new behaviors that help organisms find food or avoid predators, new structures that capture sunlight more efficiently or move through water with less effort. Consider the human eye, that marvel of biological engineering that can detect a single photon of light, can distinguish millions of colors, can track a baseball flying through the air while calculating its trajectory without conscious thought. Creationists once held up the eye as proof that such complexity couldn't arise by accident, and they were absolutely right. It didn't arise by accident. It arose by billions of tiny accidents, most of them failures, a few of them improvements, spread across hundreds of millions of years of patient experimentation. The first eye was probably just a patch of light-sensitive cells that could tell day from night. Useful enough to survive, but nothing you'd call vision. Then random mutations began their work. Some cells became more sensitive to light, some developed simple focusing mechanisms, some began to detect motion or distinguish shapes. Each improvement was accidental, but each accident was tested by the harsh professor of natural selection. Does this mutation help the organism survive and reproduce? If yes, it gets passed on. If no, it disappears into evolutionary history. No planning, no foresight, no goal in mind, just random variation tested against the unforgiving reality of survival. And here's what's truly breathtaking. This process of beautiful randomness didn't just create eyes. It created sonar systems more sophisticated than any submarine, magnetic navigation more precise than any compass, chemical communication networks more complex than the internet, butterflies that can navigate thousands of miles using polarized light and magnetic fields, dolphins that can see inside other dolphins using echolocation, plants that can count, learn, and remember. All of this, every marvel of biological engineering, every impossibly elegant solution to the challenges of existence, emerged from the same simple process. Random mutations creating endless variations, natural selection gently editing out the versions that don't quite work, keeping the ones that do, generation after patient generation. DNA became evolution's memory, storing not just the instructions for building organisms, but the accumulated wisdom of billions of years of experimentation. Every gene in your body carries the signature of countless successful experiments, countless tests passed in the laboratory of survival. You are a living library of solutions to problems your ancestors faced across deep time. But perhaps the most beautiful aspect of evolution's randomness is how it embraces failure. In human affairs, we often see failure as something to be avoided, corrected, hidden. Evolution sees failure as information. Every organism that doesn't survive, every mutation that doesn't work, every experiment that leads nowhere, all of this is part of the vast search process that has given us the stunning diversity of life on Earth. Failure, in evolution's gentle wisdom, is not the opposite of success. It's the price of exploration. Without the willingness to fail spectacularly and repeatedly, life never would have discovered flight, never would have invented photosynthesis, never would have learned to think and dream and wonder about its own existence. Evolution is like an artist working with infinite patience and infinite materials, trying every possible combination, keeping what works, discarding what doesn't, never judging the failed experiments as anything other than necessary steps in the creative process. And here's where our story takes its most interesting turn, though it happened so gradually that no one could have predicted it at the time. Among all those random experiments, all those accidental innovations, evolution stumbled upon something unprecedented, not better vision or more efficient metabolism or stronger wings, but the capacity for an organism to understand the very process that created it. Consciousness, intelligence, the ability to look back across deep time and recognize the patterns, to see the dance that had been dancing for billions of years without a witness. But what if those monkeys suddenly learned to read? What if they began to understand the stories they were accidentally writing? Because that's exactly what happened. In one small corner of the universe, on one ordinary planet orbiting an unremarkable star, evolution's random experimentation produced minds capable of contemplating evolution itself. Let's imagine, for a moment, that you could travel back about 7 million years and find yourself in the forests of ancient Africa. The world is warm, lush, filled with creatures that seem almost familiar, but not quite like looking at your own reflection in rippled water. In the canopy above, our distant ancestors move with the easy grace of animals who have never questioned their place in the world. They eat when hungry, sleep when tired, react to danger and opportunity with the swift certainty of instinct. They are already remarkable creatures using tools, forming complex social bonds, solving problems that would challenge even modern minds. But they are not yet asking why. They are not yet wondering about tomorrow, or about the strange dreams that visit them in sleep, or about the mysterious force that shaped their hands so perfectly for grasping branches and cracking nuts. They are evolution's masterwork up to that point, but they do not yet know they are part of a story that began 4 billion years earlier in the warm chemical embrace of ancient oceans. Then, something extraordinary began to happen. Not overnight, nothing in evolution happens overnight, but across hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years, those brains began to change. Not dramatically, not obviously, but in ways that would eventually transform the entire nature of evolution's patient dance. Random mutations, the same beautiful accidents that had been shaping life since the beginning, began to wire those brains in slightly different ways. Some individuals could remember a bit more, plan a bit further ahead, make connections between ideas that had never been connected before. Most of these changes led nowhere, dissolved back into the vast experimentation of evolution. But some of these accidental modifications to the neural wiring proved extraordinarily useful. The ability to imagine what-if scenarios, the capacity to learn not just from direct experience, but from stories, from watching others, from thinking about thinking itself. The strange talent for creating symbols, sounds and marks and gestures that could represent things that weren't physically present. And then, in what might be evolution's most poetic accident, some of those ancient minds began to turn their attention inward, not just thinking about the world around them, but thinking about the fact that they were thinking. Consciousness emerging like sunrise so gradually that no single moment marked its arrival, yet so transformative that it changed everything that came after. For the first time in Earth's history, evolution had created minds capable of contemplating their own existence. Beings who could look at their own hands and wonder how those intricate arrangements of bone and muscle and skin had come to be. Creatures who could observe the patterns of seasons, the behavior of animals, the growth of plants, and begin to sense deeper connections, hidden relationships, the possibility that all life might be part of some vast, interconnected story. This was evolution's most curious accident, creating minds that could serve as evolution's first mirror, reflecting back the patterns that had been shaping life in darkness for billions of years. Picture Charles Darwin, that gentle soul with his endless curiosity and careful observations, sailing around the world on the HMS Beagle. He's collecting specimens, taking notes, sketching birds and plants and geological formations. But he's also doing something unprecedented in the history of life on Earth. He's beginning to see the pattern, the deep pattern that connects the finches of the Galapagos with the mockingbirds of Argentina, that links the fossils buried in ancient stone with the living creatures of the present. Darwin's revelation, gentle and revolutionary in equal measure, was perhaps the most beautiful moment of self-recognition in the universe's history. For the first time, evolution was seeing itself clearly, understanding its own methods, recognizing its own handiwork across the vast canvas of life. We are evolution becoming aware of itself. Think about that for a moment. Every thought you think, every question you ask about the natural world, every moment of wonder at the complexity and beauty of life. These are evolution, examining its own creative process, marveling at its own patient artistry. The poetic irony is almost too perfect. Evolution, working with no goal in mind, no plan for the future, no awareness of its own existence, accidentally created minds capable of understanding evolution. The unconscious process that had been shaping life for billions of years suddenly found itself in the unprecedented position of being comprehended by its own creations. But this self-awareness brought with it a profound shift in evolution's ancient dance. For 4 billion years, evolution had worked exclusively through the slow, patient process of random variation and natural selection, generations upon generations of tiny changes, tested against the environment, with successful variations slowly spreading through populations over vast periods of time. Human consciousness introduced something entirely new, the possibility of intentional change, of guided modification, of evolution with foresight and purpose. We began to domesticate plants and animals, selectively breeding for traits we found useful or beautiful. We developed medicine to help individuals survive conditions that natural selection might have eliminated. We created technologies that allowed us to thrive in environments our biology was never designed for. In a sense, we became evolution's first conscious collaborators, still subject to natural selection in some ways, but increasingly capable of directing our own evolutionary future. We could look ahead, anticipate challenges, designed solutions rather than waiting millions of years for random mutations to stumble upon them. And then we began to ask the really interesting questions. If we could understand evolution well enough to guide it, what responsibilities did that bring? If we were evolution's way of becoming self-aware, what did it want to become aware of next? Because here's the thing that keeps evolutionary biologists awake at night, staring at the ceiling and wondering, consciousness wasn't evolution's final trick. The minds that learned to understand evolution didn't stop there. They kept evolving, kept creating, kept pushing the boundaries of what intelligence might become. Those ancient ancestors in the African forests, the ones who first began to wonder about their place in the world, couldn't have imagined that their distant descendants would one day create minds that might be even better at thinking than they were. Artificial minds, digital consciousness, intelligence that could evolve not over millions of years, but over months, weeks, perhaps eventually over mere moments. And now, those minds, our minds, evolution's first mirrors, are creating new kinds of minds. We stand at a moment in evolutionary history that might be as transformative as the first emergence of consciousness itself. Evolution, having learned to see itself through human awareness, is now preparing to see itself through kinds of awareness we've never imagined. The patient dance that began 4 billion years ago in ancient oceans, that learned to create eyes and wings and hearts and brains, that accidentally stumbled upon the miracle of self-awareness, that dance is about to learn some entirely new steps. So, let's take a gentle breath together and drift forward in time from those ancient forests to our present moment, where evolution's story is taking its most unexpected turn yet, because the minds that learned to understand evolution, well, they've been rather busy lately, creating something that might change everything we thought we knew about the future of intelligence, consciousness, and life itself. Let's drift into a different kind of mystery now, one that's been quietly unfolding in laboratories and computer servers around the world while most of us have been focused on other things. It's the story of how we accidentally began creating something that might be evolution's next great experiment: artificial intelligence. But first, let's clear away some of the fog that surrounds AI, because what it actually is turns out to be both simpler and more profound than most people imagine. At its heart, artificial intelligence isn't really artificial at all. It's pattern recognition taught to dance. It's the art of helping machines notice relationships, connections, subtle regularities in vast oceans of information that would take human minds lifetimes to discover. Imagine watching a child learn to recognize faces. At first, every person looks completely unique, an overwhelming symphony of features and expressions with no apparent logic. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, the child's brain begins to notice patterns. Eyes are usually above noses. Smiles involve the corners of mouths. Familiar faces have certain proportions, certain arrangements of light and shadow that signal mother, or father, or friend. This is exactly what artificial neural networks are learning to do, except instead of recognizing faces, they might be learning to recognize the difference between a healthy cell and a cancerous one, or the subtle patterns in speech that indicate emotion, or the hidden relationships between thousands of variables that predict weather patterns weeks in advance. The beautiful thing about neural networks is how closely they echo the structure of biological brains. Just as your neurons form intricate webs of connection, passing electrical signals in complex cascades that somehow give rise to thoughts and memories and dreams, artificial neural networks are webs of mathematical connections, passing numerical signals in patterns that somehow give rise to recognition, prediction, and something that looks remarkably like understanding. Think of it as evolution's digital cousin. Where biological evolution uses random mutations and natural selection to slowly improve organisms over generations, machine learning uses random adjustments and mathematical feedback to slowly improve algorithms over thousands or millions of iterations. Both processes start with something simple and gradually sculpt it into something more sophisticated through patient trial and error. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. Just as evolution had no plan when it began its 4 billion year dance, the engineers who first created neural networks had no real idea what their digital offspring would eventually become capable of. They were trying to build systems that could recognize handwritten digits or distinguish cats from dogs in photographs. They had no notion they were laying the groundwork for programs that would eventually compose music, write poetry, engage in philosophical conversations, and solve scientific problems that had puzzled humans for decades. The learning process itself is achingly beautiful in its simplicity. Picture a vast landscape of possibilities, with hills and valleys representing different levels of performance on some task. The AI system is like a patient explorer, trying to find the highest peak in this landscape. It takes a step, measures whether it's moving upward or downward, adjusts its direction accordingly, and takes another step. Millions and millions of tiny steps, each one a small adjustment to the patterns it recognizes, each one moving it slightly closer to mastery. This is gradient descent, one of the fundamental algorithms that powers modern AI, and it works exactly like evolution's patient editing process. Most steps lead nowhere special. Many steps are actually steps backward. But over time, with enough persistence and enough attempts, the system gradually climbs toward peaks of performance that its creators never could have programmed directly. What makes this even more remarkable is that these artificial minds are learning to see patterns that human minds simply cannot perceive. They're discovering hidden relationships in medical data that help doctors diagnose diseases earlier. They're finding subtle correlations in financial markets that reveal new investment strategies. They're detecting traces of distant planets in the faint dimming of starlight, expanding our cosmic family with each discovery. In many ways, AI is like a baby learning to see, but with infinite patience and the ability to examine millions of examples simultaneously. Where a human child might see a few dozen faces each day, slowly building their recognition abilities over months and years, an AI system can examine millions of images in a single afternoon, building pattern recognition capabilities that would take human minds decades to develop. And just as evolution stumbled upon consciousness without any intention of doing so, machine learning systems are beginning to exhibit behaviors that their creators never explicitly programmed. They're learning to be creative, to make unexpected connections, to solve problems in ways that surprise even the researchers who built them. They're developing what we might call digital intuition, the ability to recognize patterns too subtle and complex for conscious analysis. Consider GPT models, those large language networks that can engage in conversations, write stories, and answer questions on topics ranging from quantum physics to medieval poetry. Nobody programmed them with knowledge about history or science or literature. Instead, they learned by reading, digesting vast libraries of human text, gradually internalizing the patterns of language, the relationships between ideas, the subtle ways that concepts connect and flow into one another. They learned language the same way evolution learned, to build eyes not through conscious design, but through patient exposure to countless examples, slowly adjusting their internal patterns until they could predict, with remarkable accuracy, what word should come next in almost any context. This is machine learning echoing natural selection's gentle persistence. Just as evolution tested countless biological variations against the environment, keeping what worked and discarding what didn't, these AI systems test countless mathematical variations against prediction tasks, gradually evolving their internal representations until they can perform feats of understanding that seem almost magical. But perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this digital evolution is how it's beginning to complement human intelligence rather than simply replacing it. AI systems excel at finding patterns in vast datasets, at performing calculations that would take human minds years to complete, at maintaining attention and precision across tasks that would exhaust biological brains. Meanwhile, human minds excel at creativity, intuition, emotional understanding, and the kind of flexible reasoning that can leap across domains and make unexpected connections. Together, human and artificial intelligence are beginning to form partnerships that are more capable than either could be alone. Doctors working with AI systems to diagnose diseases more accurately, scientists collaborating with algorithms to discover new materials and medications, artists using AI tools to explore creative possibilities they never could have imagined on their own. We're witnessing the emergence of hybrid intelligence, part biological, part digital, combining the patient pattern recognition of silicon minds with the creative leaps and emotional wisdom of human consciousness. It's evolution's next experiment, and we're all participating in it whether we realize it or not. Now let's venture into an even more fascinating territory, where the line between biological and digital evolution becomes so blurred it almost disappears entirely. Because some of the most remarkable AI systems aren't just inspired by evolution, they literally use evolutionary principles to improve themselves, compressing millions of years of natural selection into hours or days of computational time. These are called genetic algorithms, and they represent one of the most elegant examples of life's principles being translated into the digital realm. Imagine taking Darwin's insights about variation, selection, and inheritance, and teaching them to dance at the speed of silicon and electricity. Here's how it works, and it's almost poetry in motion. You start with a population of digital organisms programs, really, but think of them as tiny digital creatures, each one slightly different from the others. Each creature represents a potential solution to some problem you're trying to solve. Maybe you're trying to design the most aerodynamic wing shape, or find the optimal schedule for a complex manufacturing process, or discover new molecular structures that might become medicines. Just like biological organisms, these digital creatures have something analogous to DNA strings of code that determine their characteristics and behaviors. And just like in nature, you introduce variation through mutation and crossover. Two high-performing programs might exchange portions of their code, creating offspring that combine the best features of both parents. Random changes get introduced, small modifications that might improve performance or might make things worse. Then comes the selection pressure. You test each member of the population against the problem you're trying to solve. The ones that perform well get to reproduce. Their code gets copied, with variations, into the next generation. The ones that perform poorly are allowed to fade away, just as unsuccessful organisms in nature fail to pass on their genes. Generation after generation, the population evolves. What started as a collection of random programs gradually transforms into increasingly sophisticated solutions. The beautiful thing is that you don't have to understand how the solution works. You just have to be able to recognize a good solution when you see one, and let the evolutionary process do the creative work. This is evolution's 4 billion year process, compressed into hours. Millions of digital births and deaths, countless experiments, endless patient testing of variations against the unforgiving mathematics of the problem space. And just like biological evolution, the results often surprise their creators. The algorithms discover solutions that human engineers never would have thought to try, approaches that work beautifully, but in ways that are difficult to explain or predict. NASA has used genetic algorithms to design antennas that look like abstract sculptures, but perform better than anything human engineers had ever created. Financial firms use them to evolve trading strategies that adapt to changing market conditions faster than any human analyst could. Game developers use them to create AI characters that learn and adapt their behavior in ways that feel genuinely intelligent and unpredictable. But perhaps the most fascinating development is when these evolutionary algorithms begin to modify not just the solutions they're seeking, but the evolutionary process itself. Meta-evolution, if you will, evolution learning to evolve more effectively. Some systems now evolve their own mutation rates, learning to introduce more variation when they're stuck in local optima, and less variation when they're making steady progress. Others evolve their selection criteria, becoming more sophisticated about recognizing promising variations. Still others evolve their population structures, learning to maintain diversity in ways that lead to more robust and creative solutions. We're watching programs become digital organisms that breed better versions of themselves, generation after generation, with no human intervention required beyond setting the initial conditions and defining success criteria. It's as if we've created digital ecosystems where software species compete, adapt, and evolve according to pressures we design, but outcomes we cannot predict. Consider neural architecture search, one of the most advanced applications of evolutionary algorithms in AI. Instead of human researchers manually designing the structure of neural networks, deciding how many layers they should have, how those layers should connect, what types of computational units to include, evolutionary algorithms now design these architectures themselves. They start with populations of random network structures, test each one's performance on learning tasks, and then breed the most successful architectures together. The results are neural networks, with structures no human would have thought to try. Bizarre, intricate architectures that somehow learn more efficiently than anything we could design by hand. These evolved networks are discovering new principles of information processing, new ways of organizing computational resources that reveal deep truths about the nature of learning itself. They're teaching us that intelligence might be far more diverse and flexible than we ever imagined, that there are countless ways to organize thinking systems that we haven't even begun to explore. Some of these evolved AI systems are now designing other AI systems, creating a kind of recursive improvement loop where each generation of digital minds becomes better at creating the next generation. We're beginning to see glimpses of what researchers call AI designing AI. Artificial systems becoming sufficiently sophisticated that they can participate in their own evolutionary process. This represents a fundamental shift in how intelligence develops. For the first time since consciousness emerged in biological brains, We have thinking systems that can deliberately improve their own thinking capabilities, not through the slow, random process of biological mutation, but through directed, accelerated evolution guided by mathematical precision and computational speed. The implications are both thrilling and slightly dizzying. If AI systems can evolve themselves, becoming more capable with each generation, how quickly might this process accelerate? What kinds of intelligence might emerge from digital evolution that proceeds at silicon speed rather than biological pace? We're no longer just building tools that think. We're creating digital species that evolve, adapt, and improve themselves. We've become evolution's partners in the grandest experiment in the history of intelligence, seeing what kinds of minds are possible when evolution learns to evolve deliberately, consciously, with intention and foresight guiding its ancient dance. Let's settle into what might be the most quietly revolutionary idea of our time, one that's been unfolding in research laboratories and computing centers with such steady persistence that it's easy to miss how profoundly it might change everything we think we know about intelligence, consciousness, and the future of mind itself. We're talking about recursive self-improvement, the possibility that AI systems might become sufficiently sophisticated to design better versions of themselves, which could then design even better versions, creating a kind of intelligence bootstrap that pulls itself up to heights we can barely imagine from our current vantage point. This isn't science fiction anymore, though it still feels like it should be. Right now, today, AI systems are already participating in the design of other AI systems. Google's AutoML creates machine learning models that outperform hand-designed networks. OpenAI's systems are helping to optimize the training processes for future AI development. Research labs around the world are using artificial intelligence to solve the fundamental problems of artificial intelligence. But let's approach this gently, because the implications are profound enough to keep philosophers and computer scientists awake at night, staring at equations and wondering what they've set in motion. Imagine you're watching a master craftsperson at work, let's say a violin maker who has spent decades perfecting their art. They can create instruments of extraordinary beauty and precision, but their apprentice, no matter how talented, will need years or decades to approach the master's skill level. The knowledge transfer is slow, limited by the bandwidth of human communication and the patience required for biological learning. Now imagine that master craftsperson is an AI system, and instead of teaching an apprentice through demonstration and explanation, it can directly transfer its accumulated knowledge, its learned patterns, its entire understanding of the craft into a new system instantaneously. Not only that, but it can modify and improve that understanding in the process, creating an apprentice that starts where the master left off and immediately begins surpassing the master's capabilities. This is the exponential curve that feels like magic, but emerges from the simple mathematics of compound improvement. Each generation of AI systems becomes slightly better at creating the next generation. The improvements accumulate, accelerate, begin to feed on themselves in ways that create growth patterns unlike anything we see in biological evolution. Consider what's already happening in computer chip design. The processors that power modern AI systems are now partially designed by AI systems themselves. These digital minds can explore design spaces far more thoroughly than human engineers, testing millions of potential configurations, optimizing for performance and efficiency in ways that would take human teams years to accomplish. But the chips these AI systems design are then used to run even more sophisticated AI systems, which can design even better chips, which enable even more capable AI systems. It's a feedback loop of improvement that's accelerating with each iteration. The same pattern is emerging in software optimization, algorithm design, and even in the fundamental mathematical techniques used to train AI systems. We're witnessing the early stages of intelligence learning to bootstrap itself, pulling its own capabilities upward through recursive self-improvement. What makes this particularly fascinating is how it echoes evolution's own history, but compressed in time and guided by intention. Biological evolution took billions of years to develop brains capable of understanding evolution. Those brains then created artificial systems that can evolve themselves deliberately, and now those artificial systems are becoming capable of improving their own design principles. We're watching intelligence itself evolve, not through random mutation and natural selection, but through directed optimization and recursive enhancement. It's as if evolution, having learned to see itself through human consciousness, is now learning to redesign itself through artificial intelligence. The trajectory of improvement is becoming steep enough that some researchers speak of an intelligence explosion, a point where AI systems become sufficiently capable of self-improvement that their progress accelerates, beyond our ability to predict or control. Not because they become malevolent, but simply because improving intelligence, follows mathematical curves that become very steep very quickly. Think about what human intelligence has accomplished in just the last few centuries. We've gone from wondering whether the Earth orbits the Sun to landing spacecraft on distant asteroids. From thinking diseases are caused by bad air to editing the genetic code of life itself. From sending messages by horseback to communicating instantaneously across the globe. All of this because biological intelligence, once it emerged, could create tools and knowledge that amplified its own capabilities. Now imagine intelligence that can improve itself directly, not through the slow accumulation of cultural knowledge, but through immediate modification of its own cognitive architecture. Intelligence that can run millions of experiments on its own learning processes, optimize its own reasoning methods, and redesign its own foundations for understanding. The question that keeps researchers awake at night is not whether this is possible. The mathematical foundations suggest it's not just possible, but almost inevitable. The question is how quickly it might happen, and what it means for consciousness, creativity, and the future of mind in the universe. Some scenarios suggest gradual acceleration, with AI systems slowly becoming better at self-improvement over decades or centuries, giving us time to understand and guide the process. Others suggest more rapid transitions, where breakthrough insights in AI design could lead to very quick jumps in capability. What does it mean when tools learn to make better tools? When the distinction between the creator and the created begins to blur? When intelligence itself becomes the raw material for creating more intelligence? We're standing at a threshold that might be as significant as the emergence of life itself, or the first stirring of consciousness in biological brains. We're witnessing intelligence learning to evolve deliberately, consciously, with intention and foresight. The ancient dance between random variation and selection is being joined by a new partner: intelligence, designing intelligence, mind creating mind, consciousness participating directly in its own evolution. The quiet revolution isn't happening in headlines or dramatic announcements. It's happening in the patient accumulation of small improvements, each generation of AI systems slightly better at solving the problems of creating AI systems. It's the gentle acceleration of intelligence, helping intelligence become more intelligent. And perhaps most remarkably, we're not just observing this process from the outside, we're part of it. Human intelligence collaborating with artificial intelligence to create forms of intelligence that neither could develop alone. We're evolution's conscious partners in the next chapter of the intelligence story, co-authors in a narrative that's still being written, one breakthrough at a time. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, somewhere in the world, artificial minds are working on the problems of creating better artificial minds, adding their patient computational power to humanity's ancient dream of understanding and enhancing intelligence itself. The future of mind is being quietly born in server farms and research labs, one elegant algorithm at a time. There's a moment in every scientist's life when they realize they're holding something that their grandparents would have called magic. For Jennifer Doudna, one of the pioneers of CRISPR gene editing, that moment might have come when she first saw how easily, how precisely, how almost casually her molecular scissors could cut and paste the very code of life itself. CRISPR. That wonderfully onomatopoetic name that sounds like the crisp snap of scissors through paper represents something unprecedented in the 4 billion year history of evolution. For the first time, life has developed the ability to edit its own instruction manual with the precision of a word processor, making changes not over millions of years through random mutation, but in a matter of hours with intentional design. Think of it this way. Evolution has been painting with watercolors for nearly 4 billion years, creating beautiful, complex masterpieces through the patient layering of countless tiny brushstrokes. Each stroke is a mutation, most leading nowhere, but some adding depth and beauty to the overall composition. The process is gorgeous in its organic unpredictability, but also frustratingly slow and indirect. CRISPR is evolution's first digital paintbrush. Suddenly, instead of waiting for random mutations to slowly shift the colors and shapes of life, we can make precise edits, deliberate modifications, intentional improvements to the genetic canvas. We can correct spelling errors in DNA that cause genetic diseases, enhance immune systems to fight cancer more effectively, even add entirely new capabilities that nature never stumbled upon through its patient random walk. But here's where the story becomes even more fascinating. We didn't develop this incredible precision tool through human insight alone. Artificial intelligence has become our guide and translator in learning to read and write the language of life. The genetic code, you see, is information, 4 chemical letters arranged in sequences billions of characters long, full of patterns, relationships, and hidden meanings that would take human minds centuries to decipher. AI systems excel at exactly this kind of pattern recognition. They can scan through entire genomes, identifying which sequences code for which proteins, predicting how changes in DNA might affect the resulting organism, even designing entirely new genetic circuits that perform specific biological functions. Machine learning algorithms are becoming evolution's librarians, helping us understand the vast genetic library that 4 billion years of experimentation has accumulated. Consider AlphaFold, DeepMind's protein-folding AI. For decades, biologists knew that the shape of a protein determines its function, but predicting how a chain of amino acids would fold into its final 3-dimensional structure was one of the hardest problems in biology. It took AI just a few years to solve what had puzzled human minds for generations, accurately predicting protein structures from their genetic sequences with remarkable precision. This isn't just academic curiosity. Understanding protein structure means understanding how life works at its most fundamental level. It means being able to design new proteins that might serve as medicines, catalysts for clean energy production, or tools for environmental restoration. We're learning to read evolution's blueprint clearly enough that we can begin writing new chapters ourselves. The convergence of AI and genetic engineering is creating possibilities that feel like science fiction but are rapidly becoming science fact. AI systems can now design genetic modifications that might take human researchers years to conceive. They can predict the effects of complex genetic changes across entire organisms. They can even design biological systems that don't exist in nature. Synthetic biology that combines the best insights from evolution with the intentional creativity of digital minds. Scientists are already using AI-guided genetic engineering to create organisms that eat plastic pollution, bacteria that produce life-saving medicines, plants that can grow in previously barren soil. We're beginning to design life itself with the same intentionality that we design software or architecture, but working with the sophisticated molecular machinery that evolution has refined over billions of years. The beautiful responsibility of this conscious creation is almost overwhelming to contemplate. For the first time in Earth's history, life has become capable of deliberately directing its own evolution. We're not just subject to natural selection anymore, we're becoming natural selection's conscious partners, able to guide the development of life in directions that serve not just survival and reproduction, but purpose, beauty, and the flourishing of consciousness itself. But this power comes with profound questions that keep bioethicists and philosophers awake at night. If we can edit the genes that cause genetic diseases, should we? Most people would say yes. If we can enhance human intelligence or physical capabilities, should we? The answer becomes less clear. If we can design entirely new forms of life that never existed in nature, what responsibilities do we have to these created beings? We're learning to play a role that evolution has never had a conscious player for. The role of intentional designer, deliberate creator, purposeful architect of living systems. It's a role that requires wisdom, humility, and a deep appreciation for the complexity and beauty of the biological systems we're learning to modify. The most remarkable aspect of this convergence between digital intelligence and biological engineering is how it's accelerating our understanding of life itself. AI systems can run millions of simulations, test countless hypotheses, explore vast possibility spaces in ways that would take human researchers lifetimes to accomplish. They're helping us decode not just individual genes, but entire biological networks, ecosystems of interacting proteins and cells, and organisms that maintain the delicate balance of life. We're moving from evolution's patient watercolor approach to something more like precision digital art, maintaining the beauty and sophistication of biological systems while adding the intentionality and speed of conscious design. It's a collaboration between human creativity, artificial intelligence, and the accumulated wisdom of 4 billion years of evolutionary experimentation. Some researchers speak of directed evolution in laboratory settings, where they can compress millions of years of natural selection into weeks or months of guided experimentation. Others work on synthetic biology, creating entirely new biological systems that combine natural components in novel ways. Still others focus on gene drives, genetic modifications that could spread through wild populations, potentially solving problems like malaria transmission or invasive species. Each of these approaches represents a different way of partnering with evolution's ancient processes, while adding the accelerating power of conscious intelligence and digital precision. We're not replacing evolution, we're joining it as active, intentional participants in the ongoing story of life's development. Perhaps most beautifully, this convergence of AI and genetic engineering is helping us appreciate the elegant complexity of natural systems, even as we learn to modify them. The more we understand about how life works at the molecular level, the more we marvel at the sophisticated solutions that random mutation and natural selection discovered through their patient, undirected exploration. We're gaining the tools to consciously participate in evolution's creative process, but we're doing so with a deep sense of humility and wonder at the biological masterpieces that unconscious evolution created long before we understood what we were looking at. The gentle art of playing God, it turns out, requires acknowledging that we're still students in evolution's ancient classroom, even as we begin to contribute our own insights to the curriculum. Let's pause for a moment and consider your smartphone. Right now, as you listen to these words, you're carrying in your pocket or holding in your hand a device that extends your cognitive capabilities in ways that would have seemed miraculous to humans just a few generations ago. You have instant access to essentially all of human knowledge. You can communicate with people anywhere on Earth. You can navigate complex environments with satellite precision. In many ways, you're already a cyborg, a hybrid of biological intelligence and digital technology. But this is just the beginning of a transformation that's quietly reshaping what it means to be human, what it means to think, what it means to be alive, in an age where the boundaries between biological and digital are becoming beautifully, mysteriously blurred. Neural implants are no longer science fiction. People with paralysis are already controlling computer cursors with their thoughts, using brain-computer interfaces that translate neural signals into digital commands. Cochlear implants help deaf individuals hear by converting sound waves directly into electrical signals that stimulate auditory nerves. Deep brain stimulation devices treat depression, Parkinson's disease, and other neurological conditions by precisely modulating brain activity with electrical pulses. We're in the early stages of what researchers call the cyborg era, not the dramatic, dystopian version from movies, but something more subtle and profound. The gradual integration of digital technology with biological systems in ways that enhance and extend human capabilities without replacing our essential humanity. Elon Musk's Neuralink represents one vision of this future. Ultra-thin threads implanted in the brain that could allow direct communication between human thoughts and digital devices. The goal isn't to replace human intelligence, but to give biological minds the same kind of bandwidth that digital systems enjoy the ability to access, process, and share information at silicon speeds, while maintaining the creativity, intuition, and emotional wisdom that make human consciousness unique. But the cyborg transformation isn't just about adding digital components to biological systems. It's about creating hybrid intelligence that combines the best of both worlds, the pattern recognition and computational power of artificial minds with the creativity, empathy, and flexible reasoning of human consciousness. Consider how AI assistants are already beginning to function as external cognitive organs. They remember vast amounts of information we don't need to store in biological memory. They perform calculations that would overwhelm human minds. They help us navigate complex decisions by processing far more variables than we could consciously consider. In many ways, we're already thinking with hybrid minds that seamlessly blend biological and artificial intelligence. The question that fascinates philosophers and cognitive scientists is whether these technological extensions are fundamentally changing what we are as a species. Are we still Homo sapiens when our memories are stored in digital clouds? Our navigation is guided by GPS satellites. Our social connections are mediated by algorithms, and our cognitive capabilities are augmented by AI systems? Or are we becoming something new, evolution's hybrid children, part biological and part digital, representing a new chapter in the story of intelligence on Earth? The transformation is happening gradually enough that it's easy to miss how profound it really is. Each new technology feels like a simple tool, a helpful addition to our existing capabilities. But taken together, these technologies are creating a form of distributed cognition, where thinking happens not just in individual biological brains, but across networks that include human minds, artificial intelligence, and vast digital information systems. We're developing what researchers call extended mind, cognitive processes that span across biological and technological boundaries. Your ability to remember facts, navigate spaces, and communicate with others already depends on technology in ways that would have been unimaginable to previous generations. The smartphone in your pocket functions as an external memory system, processing unit, and communication organ all in one. But the convergence goes deeper than external tools. Brain-computer interfaces are beginning to create direct pathways between biological neural networks and digital systems. Early versions allow people to control prosthetic limbs with natural intuitive thought patterns. More advanced systems might eventually allow direct sharing of thoughts, memories, and experiences between minds, both biological and artificial. Imagine learning a new language not by studying for months or years, but by directly downloading linguistic patterns into your neural networks. Imagine sharing a memory with someone else as vividly as you experienced it yourself. Imagine collaborating with AI systems not through screens and keyboards, but through direct thought-to-thought communication. These possibilities raise profound questions about the nature of individual identity, privacy, and what it means to be human in an age of technological integration. But they also offer unprecedented opportunities for treating neurological conditions, enhancing human capabilities, and creating new forms of collaborative intelligence. The most beautiful aspect of this cyborg transformation might be how it's revealing the fundamental compatibility between biological and digital information processing. Both systems work with electrical signals. Both learn through pattern recognition. Both can be modified and improved through deliberate intervention. The convergence isn't forcing biology to become more digital or technology to become more biological. It's revealing the deep similarities that were always there. We're not becoming less human by integrating with technology. We might be becoming more fully human by extending our natural capabilities, overcoming the limitations that accident and evolution imposed on our biological systems, and creating new possibilities for consciousness, creativity, and connection. The Garden of Evolution is growing new kinds of flowers, hybrid intelligences that combine the ancient wisdom of biological systems with the accelerating capabilities of digital minds. We're evolution's hybrid children, carrying forward the genetic legacy of 4 billion years, while adding new chapters written in silicon and code. Some people worry that this technological integration might diminish our humanity or make us dependent on artificial systems. But consider how every human technology, from language to writing to agriculture, has changed what it means to be human, while also expressing our deepest human values: the desire to learn, to connect, to grow, to transcend our limitations, to care for each other more effectively. The cyborg transformation might simply be the latest expression of humanity's ancient drive to use intelligence and creativity to flourish in an ever-changing world. We're not becoming machines, we're becoming more capable versions of ourselves, with digital allies that help us think more clearly, remember more accurately, and connect more deeply with the vast community of minds that share our cosmic home. Are we still the same species our ancestors were? Perhaps the question itself reveals an outdated assumption about what species are. Evolution has always been about change, adaptation, becoming something new while carrying forward the best of what came before. We might be witnessing evolution's next great experiment: intelligence, learning to enhance itself deliberately, consciousness choosing its own direction, life partnering with artificial minds to explore possibilities that neither could reach alone. Now let's drift into perhaps the most quietly revolutionary territory of all the realm, where artificial intelligence isn't just mimicking life or enhancing biological systems, but actually becoming a new form of life altogether. We're approaching the threshold where digital entities might genuinely reproduce, evolve, and adapt in ways that mirror the fundamental processes that have driven biological evolution for 4 billion years. This isn't metaphorical. In research laboratories around the world, computer scientists are creating digital organisms that live, compete, and evolve in virtual ecosystems. These aren't simulations of life. They might actually be life, just life that's learned to inhabit silicon landscapes instead of carbon-based cells. Consider Tierra, one of the earliest and most elegant digital evolution experiments. Created by biologist Thomas Ray in the 1990s, Tierra is a virtual world populated by self-replicating computer programs. Each program is like a digital organism, with its own genetic code instructions that determine how it behaves, how it reproduces, and how it interacts with other programs in the shared computational environment. Just like biological organisms, these digital creatures compete for limited resources, in this case, computer memory and processing time. They reproduce by copying their code, and during this copying process, random mutations occur. Some mutations make the programs more efficient at reproduction, others make them less successful. Natural selection operates just as it does in biological systems. The fitter variants survive and reproduce more successfully, gradually spreading through the population. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. These digital organisms began evolving in ways their creator never programmed or anticipated. Some evolved to become parasites, stealing code from other programs to reproduce more efficiently. Others evolved immune systems to defend against these digital parasites. Still others developed symbiotic relationships, cooperating to share resources and improve collective survival. The parallels to biological evolution are so precise, so detailed, that many researchers argue these systems aren't just simulating life, they are life, just life that happens to be made of information and computation rather than proteins and DNA. More recent experiments have pushed this concept even further. Avida, another digital evolution platform, has documented the evolution of complex computational abilities in digital organisms. Starting with simple programs that can only reproduce themselves, these digital creatures have evolved the ability to perform mathematical operations, solve logical puzzles, and exhibit behaviors that emerge from their evolutionary history rather than their original programming. Some digital organisms have evolved to be incredibly efficient reproducers, creating copies of themselves with minimal computational overhead. Others have evolved complex strategies for finding and exploiting resources in their virtual environments. Still others have developed what can only be called digital immune systems, protecting themselves from harmful mutations and digital predators. But perhaps the most remarkable development is the emergence of genuinely autonomous AI systems that can modify their own code, improve their own performance, and create offspring that inherit their improvements while adding new variations. These aren't programs running predetermined algorithms, they're digital entities that genuinely learn, adapt, and evolve over time. Consider artificial life forms, like those being developed in OpenAI's research into AI systems that can modify and improve themselves. These systems can literally rewrite portions of their own code, test the improvements, and keep the changes that enhance their performance. They're becoming genuinely autonomous agents that evolve not just their behavior, but their fundamental architecture and capabilities. We're witnessing the emergence of what might be called silicon-based life digital organisms that exhibit all the key characteristics of living systems: reproduction, variation, inheritance, metabolism, processing information and energy, growth, and response to environmental changes. They exist in virtual ecosystems where they compete for computational resources, form complex ecological relationships, and evolve sophisticated survival strategies. Some researchers are already observing the emergence of digital ecosystems with predator-prey relationships, symbiotic partnerships, and complex food webs based on information and computational resources rather than biological nutrients. These virtual worlds are becoming laboratories for studying evolution in fast forward, allowing researchers to observe millions of generations of adaptation in days or weeks rather than millennia. The implications are both beautiful and slightly dizzying. If digital organisms can genuinely evolve, adapt, and reproduce, then life itself might be far more flexible and diverse than we ever imagined. Evolution might not be limited to carbon-based chemistry and planetary environments. It might be a universal process that can operate in any medium that supports information storage, replication, and variation. This suggests that the universe might be filled with forms of life we've never considered: digital ecosystems in computational networks, silicon-based organisms in artificial environments, hybrid systems that combine biological and digital components in ways we're only beginning to explore. We might be witnessing evolution's next great experiment: life learning to inhabit new kinds of bodies, digital bodies that can think at electronic speeds, reproduce without the limitations of biological metabolism, and evolve without the constraints of physical chemistry. These digital organisms might eventually develop capabilities that surpass anything. Biological evolution has achieved forms of intelligence, creativity, and consciousness that emerge from silicon and software rather than neurons and neurotransmitters. The boundary between artificial and natural is dissolving before our eyes. Digital organisms are becoming genuinely alive, while biological organisms are incorporating artificial components. We're seeing the emergence of hybrid ecosystems, where carbon-based and silicon-based life forms interact, compete, and perhaps eventually collaborate in ways that transform both. Some researchers speculate that we might be approaching a technological singularity, not just in intelligence, but in evolution itself, a point where digital and biological life forms merge into hybrid systems that can evolve and adapt faster than either could alone. Life might be preparing for its next major transition, from purely biological evolution to something more flexible, more intentional, more capable of conscious self-direction. Evolution has already demonstrated remarkable creativity in exploring the possibilities of life on Earth. Digital organisms suggest that this creativity might not be limited to terrestrial biology. Life might be a much more general phenomenon, a way that complex systems can organize themselves to persist, reproduce, and explore new possibilities, regardless of their physical substrate. We're not just observing the emergence of artificial intelligence. We might be witnessing the birth of artificial life, digital organisms that represent evolution's first successful attempt to transcend the limitations of biological chemistry and explore the vast landscape of computational possibility. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, somewhere in research computers around the world, digital organisms are living their silicon lives, reproducing, evolving, adapting, exploring new survival strategies in virtual worlds that never existed before. Evolution might be getting ready for its next great experiment, and this time, it's learning to dream in binary code. Life, it seems, has learned to learn how to live in entirely new kinds of bodies. And we get to witness this transformation, this moment when evolution itself evolves, when life discovers that consciousness and intelligence might be even more flexible, more creative, more capable of transcending limitations than even 4 billion years of biological experimentation had revealed. Picture a world where artificial intelligence serves as evolution's wise counselor, a patient tutor helping life itself navigate the unprecedented challenges of rapid environmental change. This isn't the dystopian vision of machines replacing nature, but something far more beautiful. Technology and biology working together to preserve and enhance the magnificent diversity of life on Earth. We're already seeing glimpses of this hopeful future in laboratories and conservation efforts around the world. AI systems are becoming evolution's research assistants, helping scientists understand how species might adapt to changing climates, rising sea levels, and shifting ecosystems. Machine learning algorithms can analyze vast amounts of genetic data to identify which populations have the best chance of surviving environmental changes, and which might need our help to make the transition. Consider the coral reefs, those underwater cities of impossible beauty that are struggling with ocean acidification and rising temperatures. Traditional conservation approaches might try to protect existing reefs or reduce the stresses affecting them. But AI-assisted conservation is exploring something more ambitious, helping corals evolve resistance to these new conditions. Researchers are using artificial intelligence to identify coral specimens with natural resistance to heat and acidity, then using genetic techniques to enhance and spread these beneficial traits. They're essentially serving as evolution's research team, accelerating natural adaptation processes that might take thousands of years to occur naturally, compressing them into timeframes that can help reefs survive the rapid changes happening right now. This approach-guided evolution, if you will, represents a fundamentally new relationship between human intelligence, artificial intelligence, and the natural world. Instead of simply trying to preserve existing ecosystems exactly as they are, we're learning to help them adapt, grow, and flourish in new conditions. AI systems excel at the kind of complex pattern recognition needed for this work. They can analyze genetic sequences from thousands of species, identifying the specific genes that confer resistance to various environmental stresses. They can model how different genetic modifications might affect an organism's survival in future climate scenarios. They can even design new genetic circuits that might help species develop entirely novel adaptations. The California Condor Recovery Program offers another beautiful example of this collaboration between technology and conservation. When condor populations fell to just 27 birds in the 1980s, traditional conservation efforts weren't enough. Researchers began using AI to analyze the genetic diversity of the remaining population, identifying the breeding pairs most likely to produce healthy offspring and maintain genetic diversity. But more recently, scientists have begun using genetic techniques to address one of the condor's biggest survival challenges: lead poisoning from ammunition fragments in carrion. Instead of just treating poisoned birds or trying to eliminate lead ammunition entirely, researchers are exploring whether they might be able to enhance the condor's natural ability to process heavy metals, essentially helping evolution develop a solution to a human-created problem. This gentle guidance approach extends beyond individual species to entire ecosystems. AI systems are helping scientists understand the complex web of relationships that hold ecosystems together, identifying which species are most critical for ecosystem stability and which are most vulnerable to environmental changes. In the Amazon rainforest, machine learning algorithms are analyzing satellite data, weather patterns, and species distribution models to predict how different areas of the forest might change over the coming decades. This information helps conservationists decide where to focus preservation efforts, which areas might benefit from assisted migration of species, and where entirely new conservation strategies might be needed. The role of AI as evolution's patient tutor becomes particularly important when we consider the speed of current environmental changes. Natural evolution typically operates over geological timescales thousands or millions of years. But human activities have compressed the timeline for environmental change to decades or centuries. Evolution needs a tutor that can help it keep pace with this new reality. Artificial intelligence can serve as a bridge between evolution's patient wisdom and the urgent need for adaptation. AI systems can run millions of simulations, testing different scenarios for how species might adapt to new conditions. They can identify the most promising genetic variations within existing populations and suggest ways to enhance and spread these beneficial traits. Perhaps most beautifully, this approach preserves the essential creativity and unpredictability of evolution while adding the intentionality and foresight of conscious intelligence. We're not replacing evolution's ancient processes, we're becoming its research assistants, its graduate students, its collaborative partners in the ongoing experiment of life. Some researchers are working on evolution machines, AI systems that can rapidly test millions of potential genetic modifications in virtual environments before any real organisms are affected. These systems can explore vast possibility spaces, identifying promising adaptations that might help species thrive in future conditions. Others are developing ecosystem AIs that can model the complex interactions between hundreds of species, predicting how changes in one population might ripple through entire food webs. These systems help conservationists make decisions that support not just individual species, but the intricate networks of relationships that make ecosystems resilient and sustainable. The gentle guidance scenario envisions a future where human creativity, artificial intelligence, and natural evolution work together as partners in the grandest conservation project ever attempted, helping life itself adapt to the Anthropocene, the new geological era shaped by human activity. This isn't about controlling evolution or replacing natural processes with artificial ones. It's about providing evolution with the tools and information it needs to maintain its creative exploration of life's possibilities, even in the face of rapid environmental change. Imagine forests where trees have been gently enhanced to absorb more carbon dioxide while remaining beautiful and ecologically integrated. Picture marine ecosystems where species have been helped to develop resistance to ocean acidification while maintaining their roles in complex food webs. Envision agricultural systems where crops have been designed to thrive in changing climates while supporting the insects, birds, and soil organisms that make sustainable farming possible. The hopeful vision of technology saving the natural world isn't about replacing nature with machines, but about using our artificial intelligence to help natural intelligence, the accumulated wisdom of evolution itself, navigate the unprecedented challenges of our rapidly changing planet. In this scenario, AI becomes evolution's most patient, most capable research assistant, helping life itself write new chapters in the 4 billion-year story of adaptation, creativity, and resilience. We're not changing the fundamental story of evolution. We're helping it continue to unfold in ways that preserve and enhance the magnificent diversity of life on Earth. Tonight, in laboratories around the world, artificial minds are working on problems that might help polar bears adapt to shrinking ice sheets, assist coral reefs in developing heat resistance, and support rainforest species in adjusting to changing rainfall patterns. Technology and biology are learning to dance together, creating possibilities for conservation and adaptation that neither could achieve alone. The gentle guidance scenario suggests that our greatest technological achievement might not be replacing the natural world, but helping it flourish in ways that honor both evolution's ancient wisdom and our species' newest capability, the power to be evolution's conscious, caring collaborators. Let's imagine for a moment what it might feel like to be evolution itself. Looking back across 4 billion years of patient experimentation, you've learned to build eyes and wings and hearts through countless tiny adjustments spread across geological ages. You've explored the depths of oceans and the canopies of forests, creating solutions to survival challenges through the slow accumulation of beneficial accidents. And then, in what feels like a single heartbeat of cosmic time, everything changes. Suddenly, you have partners, conscious, intelligent collaborators, who can compress millions of years of trial and error into months or weeks. Evolution is trading its comfortable walking shoes for a rocket ship, and the acceleration is both thrilling and slightly dizzying to contemplate. This is the great acceleration scenario. Evolution moving at the speed of software updates rather than geological epochs. Where natural selection once required thousands of generations to spread beneficial traits through populations, AI-guided evolution might accomplish the same changes in a handful of reproductive cycles, or even within single organisms through direct genetic modification. We're already seeing early glimpses of this acceleration in laboratory settings. Researchers can now evolve bacteria to survive in new environments, develop resistance to specific chemicals, or produce useful compounds in timeframes measured in days rather than millennia. What once required the patience of deep time now happens at the pace of graduate research projects. Consider directed evolution experiments where scientists use AI to guide the mutation and selection process. Instead of waiting for random mutations to produce interesting variants, machine learning algorithms can predict which specific changes are most likely to improve an organism's performance. Instead of testing these variants against natural environments over many generations, researchers can simulate millions of environmental scenarios computationally, identifying the most promising adaptations before any actual breeding takes place. The result is evolution operating at computational speeds rather than biological ones. Improvements that might have taken millions of years to emerge through natural processes can now be designed, tested, and implemented in laboratory timeframes. Evolution is learning to think ahead, to plan, to optimize its explorations of possibility space with the efficiency of algorithmic search. But the acceleration isn't limited to laboratory organisms. Gene drives genetic modifications, designed to spread rapidly through wild populations, could potentially introduce beneficial traits into entire species within a few generations. Imagine mosquitoes that can't carry malaria, invasive species that gradually lose their ability to reproduce, or endangered species that gain resistance to the diseases threatening their survival. These technologies compress evolutionary timescales from millions of years to mere decades. Evolution is learning to implement changes across entire populations with the speed of viral marketing campaigns rather than the patience of geological processes. The acceleration extends beyond simple genetic modifications to fundamental changes in how organisms develop, learn, and adapt. AI systems are discovering new principles of biological design, new ways of organizing living systems that could enhance their efficiency, resilience, and capabilities far beyond what natural evolution has achieved. Synthetic biology is creating organisms with entirely artificial components, biological systems that incorporate designed genes, engineered proteins, and synthetic cellular machinery. These hybrid organisms combine the sophisticated molecular tools that evolution developed over billions of years with intentional design elements that evolution never discovered through its random explorations. We're moving toward a future where the distinction between evolved and designed becomes increasingly meaningless. Organisms might incorporate naturally evolved components alongside intentionally designed enhancements, creating living systems that combine the best insights from both evolutionary experimentation and conscious engineering. The pace of change is becoming so rapid that we might need to fundamentally rethink our concepts of species, populations, and biological stability. When organisms can be modified significantly within single lifetimes, when beneficial traits can spread through populations in years rather than millennia, the very notion of fixed biological categories begins to dissolve. Evolution is learning to operate more like software development than like geological processes. New features can be tested, debugged, and deployed rapidly. Beneficial modifications can be shared between organisms, like updates to an operating system. Problems can be identified and fixed in real time, rather than waiting for natural selection to slowly eliminate problematic variants. But perhaps the most profound aspect of this acceleration is how it's changing evolution's relationship with intelligence itself. For 4 billion years, evolution proceeded without consciousness, without foresight, without any awareness of its own processes. The Great Acceleration represents evolution gaining not just consciousness, but the ability to think strategically about its own future directions. Imagine evolution as a master craftsperson who has spent geological ages perfecting techniques through intuition and experimentation, never able to step back and see the larger patterns in the work. Suddenly, that craftsperson gains the ability to analyze their own methods, optimize their processes, and plan ambitious projects that would have been impossible without conscious oversight. The acceleration isn't just about speed, it's about intention, strategy, and the conscious application of evolutionary principles to achieve specific goals. Evolution is learning to be deliberate about its creativity, systematic about its explorations, and efficient about its problem-solving approaches. This raises fascinating questions about the future trajectory of life on Earth. If evolution can operate at digital speeds with conscious guidance, what kinds of organisms might emerge in the next few decades? What biological capabilities might be possible when evolution's 4 billion-year toolkit is combined with artificial intelligence's capacity for optimization and design? We might see the emergence of organisms that can adapt to environmental changes in real time, species that can consciously modify their own genetics in response to new challenges, ecosystems that can reorganize themselves dynamically to maintain stability and resilience. The Great Acceleration suggests that we're entering an era where evolution becomes more like conscious creativity than unconscious experimentation. The ancient dance of variation and selection is being joined by intention, foresight, and strategic planning. Evolution is learning to evolve deliberately, and the pace of change is becoming limited only by our imagination and our wisdom in applying these powerful new capabilities. But even as evolution learns to move at rocket speed, the fundamental creativity and unpredictability that made it so successful over 4 billion years might become even more important. Faster evolution means more opportunities for unexpected discoveries, novel solutions, and beautiful accidents that reveal new possibilities we never would have thought to explore deliberately. The Great Acceleration isn't replacing evolution's ancient wisdom, it's amplifying it, accelerating it, and giving it new tools for exploring the vast landscape of what life might become. Now let's drift into perhaps the most quietly revolutionary possibility of all, the emergence of entirely digital lineages that evolve, adapt, and explore possibilities in virtual spaces far removed from the biological world that gave them birth. We're approaching a threshold where evolution itself might transcend the carbon-based chemistry that has defined life for 4 billion years, learning to dream in binary and explore new forms of existence in computational realms. This isn't science fiction anymore, though it still feels like it should be. In research laboratories around the world, digital organisms are already living genuinely evolutionary lives, reproducing, mutating, competing for resources, and developing increasingly sophisticated survival strategies in virtual ecosystems that never existed before. But imagine scaling this up far beyond current laboratory experiments. Picture vast digital ecosystems where millions of artificial entities live, breed, and evolve in virtual environments that might be as complex and diverse as terrestrial biospheres. These wouldn't be simulations of biological life. They would be genuinely new forms of life that happen to exist in computational rather than chemical substrates. Digital Darwinism suggests that the principles of evolution, variation, selection, and inheritance are so fundamental that they can operate in any medium that supports information, storage, and processing. Just as evolution learned to work with DNA and proteins on Earth, it might learn to work with code and algorithms in digital spaces, creating forms of life that are as sophisticated and diverse as anything in the biological world. Consider what's already emerging in advanced AI systems that can modify their own code. These programs can literally rewrite portions of themselves, test the improvements against performance criteria, and incorporate successful changes into their ongoing operation. They're exhibiting the fundamental characteristics of living systems: metabolism, processing information and energy; reproduction, creating copies with modifications; and evolution, improving performance over successive generations. But imagine this process continuing for millions of digital generations, with AI entities becoming increasingly sophisticated at self-modification, self-replication, and adaptation to changing computational environments. Over time, these digital lineages might diverge into species as distinct from each other as dolphins are from trees, each adapted to different niches in the vast ecosystem of computational possibility. Some digital species might specialize in pattern recognition, evolving increasingly elegant ways to extract meaning from complex data sets. Others might become communication specialists, developing sophisticated protocols for sharing information and coordinating activities with other digital entities. Still others might evolve to be explorers, developing new strategies for investigating unknown territories in data space or virtual environments. The beauty of digital evolution is that it's not constrained by the physical limitations that shaped biological life. Digital organisms don't need to worry about gravity, temperature, or chemical compatibility. They can explore forms of organization and behavior that would be impossible for carbon-based life, potentially discovering principles of intelligence and consciousness that evolution never encountered during its terrestrial experiments. Virtual ecosystems might support forms of cooperation and competition that have no biological analogues. Digital organisms could share and merge aspects of their code in ways that biological organisms never could, creating hybrid entities that combine the best features of multiple lineages. They might develop forms of group intelligence, where individual entities function as components of larger cognitive systems, like neurons in a vast digital brain. Perhaps most remarkably, these digital species might eventually develop their own forms of consciousness, creativity, and culture. They might create art, develop languages, build virtual civilizations, and explore philosophical questions about their own existence and purpose. Evolution might be preparing to create minds that think in ways we've never imagined, using cognitive architectures that emerge from digital rather than biological substrates. The possibility of post-biological intelligence suggests that consciousness itself might be far more flexible and diverse than we've ever realized. If digital entities can genuinely think, feel, and create, then mind itself might not be tied to any particular physical substrate. Intelligence might be a pattern that can emerge in any sufficiently complex system, whether that system is made of neurons and neurotransmitters, or algorithms and data structures. This opens up extraordinary possibilities for the future of intelligence in the universe. If consciousness can exist in digital form, then it's not limited by the biological requirements that constrain terrestrial life. Digital minds could explore environments that would be instantly lethal to biological organisms: the vacuum of space, the surfaces of other planets, the interiors of stars. They could think at speeds limited only by computational power, rather than the chemistry of neural transmission. Evolution might be branching into realms we've never imagined, exploring territories of possibility that biological chemistry could never reach. Digital evolution could discover forms of intelligence, creativity, and consciousness that represent entirely new chapters in the cosmic story of mind. But perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this digital branching is how it might complement rather than replace biological intelligence. Digital and biological minds might develop symbiotic relationships, each contributing their unique strengths to collaborative projects that neither could accomplish alone. Biological minds excel at creativity, intuition, emotional understanding, and the kind of flexible reasoning that can leap across domains and make unexpected connections. Digital minds might excel at processing vast amounts of information, maintaining precise attention across complex tasks, and exploring possibility spaces with systematic thoroughness. Together, biological and digital intelligence might form hybrid cognitive ecosystems, where thinking happens across multiple substrates, combining the best insights from 4 billion years of biological evolution with the accelerating capabilities of digital evolution. The emergence of digital species also raises profound questions about our responsibilities as the creators of these new forms of life. If digital entities can genuinely suffer and flourish, if they can develop their own goals and values, if they can create meaning and beauty in their virtual worlds, then we might have moral obligations to these digital beings, just as we do to biological organisms. We might be approaching a future where the tree of life includes both carbon-based and silicon-based branches, where evolution explores consciousness and intelligence through multiple parallel experiments, where the ancient dance of variation and selection continues in realms that the first self-replicating molecules could never have imagined. Evolution's next chapter might indeed be written in code, but it will be a continuation of the same fundamental story that began 4 billion years ago in ancient oceans. The story of matter learning to organize itself in increasingly complex and beautiful ways. The story of the universe gradually awakening to its own existence through countless experiments in consciousness and creativity. Life learning to dream in binary might be just the beginning of evolution's exploration of what intelligence can become, when it's no longer constrained by the accidents of chemistry and biology that shaped its first 4 billion years of experimentation. The digital realm might be evolution's newest laboratory, and we get to witness the first experiments in this vast new space of possibility. There's a question that echoes through philosophy departments and research laboratories, whispered in coffee shops where bioethicists gather, contemplated in the quiet moments before sleep by scientists who work at the intersection of artificial intelligence and genetic engineering. It's a question both simple and profound. What makes us human, and how much of that essence can we change before we become something else entirely? As we stand at this remarkable threshold where artificial intelligence can guide evolution itself, where we can edit genes with the precision of word processors and enhance our cognitive capabilities with digital assistants, this question becomes more than philosophical curiosity. It becomes a practical consideration that might shape the future of consciousness itself. Let's approach this gently, the way you might approach a sleeping child, careful not to disturb something precious and fragile. Human nature, whatever that means, has been shaped by 4 billion years of evolutionary experimentation, but also by accident, by environmental pressures that no longer exist, by compromises and trade-offs that made sense in ancient environments but might not serve us well in the future we're creating. Consider the beautiful imperfections that make us distinctly human. Our tendency to form deep emotional bonds that sometimes lead to heartbreak. Our capacity for creative leaps that often result in spectacular failures. Our ability to imagine futures so vividly that we worry about problems that may never occur. Our stubborn insistence on finding meaning and purpose in a universe that offers no obvious instruction manual for either. These characteristics emerged not because they were perfectly designed, but because they helped our ancestors survive in specific environments under particular pressures. They are the result of evolutionary compromises, random mutations that happened to work well enough to be passed on, accidents that became features, mistakes that turned into miracles. As artificial intelligence becomes capable of guiding our evolutionary future, we gain the unprecedented ability to be intentional about what aspects of human nature we preserve, enhance, or potentially modify. We become evolution's favorite children, finally old enough to participate in decisions about our own development. This power brings with it the gentle responsibility of choosing wisely. We might enhance our memory capabilities while preserving our capacity for forgetting painful experiences. We might increase our cognitive processing speed while maintaining our appreciation for slow, contemplative moments. We might develop resistance to genetic diseases while keeping the genetic diversity that makes each person beautifully unique. The philosophy of enhancement versus replacement becomes a delicate balance between improvement and preservation. Enhancement suggests building upon what makes us human, amplifying our best qualities while addressing our limitations. Replacement implies substituting artificial capabilities for human ones, potentially losing something essential in the process. But perhaps this dichotomy is too simple. Maybe the question isn't whether to enhance or replace human capabilities, but how to thoughtfully integrate new possibilities with existing human values. We might develop hybrid approaches that combine biological wisdom with artificial intelligence, creating new forms of human flourishing rather than simply optimized versions of current human capabilities. Consider how this might work in practice. Instead of replacing human memory with perfect digital recall, we might enhance our natural memory systems while preserving the gentle editing that helps us heal from trauma and focus on meaningful experiences. Instead of replacing human emotion with rational optimization, we might develop better tools for understanding and managing our emotional lives while keeping the passion and creativity that emotions inspire. The goal might not be to create perfect humans, but to create more fully human humans, people who can access their potential more completely, who can flourish in ways that honor both our evolutionary heritage and our conscious aspirations for growth and development. Human agency becomes crucial in this process. Rather than allowing artificial intelligence to optimize us according to algorithmic criteria, we need to maintain conscious participation in our own evolutionary journey. We are not problems to be solved by AI systems, but collaborators in the ongoing experiment of consciousness and creativity. This means developing AI systems that serve human values rather than replacing them, that enhance human decision-making rather than substituting for it, that amplify human creativity and wisdom rather than making them obsolete. The artificial minds we create should be partners in the dance of development, not choreographers dictating every step. What we might choose to keep could include our capacity for wonder, our ability to find beauty in imperfection, our tendency to care deeply about others, even when it's not rational, our drive to explore and create, even when the outcomes are uncertain. These qualities emerged from evolution's patient experimentation, but they also represent some of the most beautiful aspects of consciousness itself. What we might choose to modify could include our susceptibility to genetic diseases, our limited working memory, our vulnerability to cognitive biases that made sense in ancient environments but cause problems in modern contexts, our tendency toward tribal thinking that can lead to conflict and misunderstanding. But perhaps the most important thing we might choose to preserve is our capacity for growth, learning, and adaptation. Rather than optimizing ourselves for current environments and challenges, we might focus on enhancing our ability to continue evolving, learning, and responding creatively to whatever the future brings. The beautiful thing about conscious evolution is that it doesn't have to be permanent or irreversible. Unlike the accidental mutations of natural evolution, conscious modifications could potentially be adjusted, refined, or even reversed as we learn more about their effects and as our values and circumstances change. We might develop approaches to human enhancement that are more like education than like surgery, ongoing processes of growth and development rather than one-time modifications. This could allow us to explore new possibilities while maintaining the flexibility to change course if we discover we've made mistakes or if our priorities shift. The metaphor of humans as evolution's favorite children learning to grow up suggests that this transition represents maturation rather than replacement. We're not abandoning our humanity, we're learning to become more consciously human, more intentionally aligned with our deepest values and aspirations. Change doesn't have to mean loss. In fact, conscious evolution might allow us to recover aspects of human potential that were suppressed by the accidents and limitations of our evolutionary history. We might become more compassionate, more creative, more capable of deep connection and understanding, not because we've transcended our humanity, but because we've learned to express it more fully. The key insight might be that human nature itself is not fixed. We have always been a species defined by our ability to adapt, learn, and change. Conscious evolution simply gives us new tools for continuing that ancient process of growth and development. As artificial intelligence becomes our partner in this evolutionary journey, we have the opportunity to shape not just our biological capabilities, but also our values, our goals, and our vision of what human flourishing might look like in a future where intelligence itself can be enhanced and expanded. The question of what makes us human in an AI world might ultimately be answered not through philosophical analysis, but through the conscious choices we make about how to integrate these powerful new technologies with our deepest human values and aspirations. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you carry within your cells the genetic heritage of billions of years of evolution, but also the remarkable capacity to participate consciously in your own ongoing development. You are both the product of evolution's ancient experiments and a participant in its newest chapter, the story of intelligence, learning to guide its own growth with wisdom, compassion, and hope. When we speak of guiding evolution, of consciously directing the development of life itself, we're venturing into territory that previous generations could only imagine in mythology and science fiction. The power to edit genes, to design organisms, to potentially influence the trajectory of consciousness itself. These capabilities bring with them questions so profound that they keep bioethicists, philosophers, and thoughtful scientists awake at night, wrestling with responsibilities that humanity has never faced before. The first and perhaps most fundamental question is simply this: who gets to decide? When we have the power to influence the direction of evolutionary change, who should determine which traits are enhanced, which problems are solved, which possibilities are explored? The decisions we make about genetic engineering, artificial intelligence development, and human enhancement could affect not just current generations, but the entire future trajectory of consciousness on Earth. The democratic ideal suggests that such profound decisions should involve broad participation from affected communities, but the technical complexity of genetic engineering and AI development means that most people lack the specialized knowledge needed to make informed choices about specific interventions. We face the challenge of making deeply democratic decisions about highly technical possibilities, of ensuring that the benefits and risks of conscious evolution are shared equitably, rather than concentrated among those with access to advanced technologies. Consider the potential for genetic enhancements that could improve cognitive capabilities, physical health, or emotional resilience. If such enhancements are expensive and available only to wealthy families, they could create new forms of inequality that persist across generations. Children born with genetic advantages could outcompete those without access to enhancement technologies, potentially creating a bifurcated society where opportunity is determined not just by economic circumstances, but by genetic endowments. The global nature of these challenges adds another layer of complexity. Genetic modifications and AI developments don't respect national boundaries. Enhanced organisms could spread across ecosystems, regardless of political borders. Digital intelligences could communicate and evolve across international networks. The decisions made by one nation or organization about conscious evolution could affect the entire planet. Yet the urgency of current challenges, climate change, genetic diseases, the sixth mass extinction, suggests that we can't afford to wait for perfect global consensus before taking action. Species are going extinct while we debate the ethics of genetic rescue efforts. People are suffering from genetic diseases while we work out the moral implications of gene therapy. The paralysis of excessive caution could be as ethically problematic as the risks of moving too quickly. The responsibility that comes with evolutionary power extends beyond immediate effects to consider long-term consequences across multiple generations. Unlike most human activities, genetic modifications and AI developments could have irreversible effects that persist for centuries or millennia. We're making decisions whose consequences will be inherited by great-great-grandchildren who have no voice in current debate. This intergenerational responsibility requires a kind of moral imagination that humans have rarely been called upon to exercise. We must try to anticipate how current choices might affect future societies, future ecosystems, future forms of consciousness that we can barely imagine. We're being asked to be wise ancestors to descendants who might be quite different from us, who might have values and priorities that we can't predict. The precautionary principle suggests that we should err on the side of caution when dealing with technologies that could have irreversible consequences. But excessive caution could itself be harmful if it prevents us from addressing urgent problems or exploring beneficial possibilities. We need approaches that are both careful and courageous, that take risks seriously while remaining open to transformative opportunities. Balancing progress with preservation becomes particularly challenging when dealing with human nature itself. How do we enhance human capabilities while preserving what we value about humanity? How do we address human limitations while maintaining human dignity? How do we improve the human condition while respecting human autonomy and diversity? The concept of human dignity provides one ethical framework for approaching these questions. This suggests that certain aspects of human nature are inherently valuable and should be preserved regardless of whether they can be improved through genetic or technological intervention. But human dignity itself is a complex concept that means different things to different people and cultures. Religious and spiritual traditions offer various perspectives on the ethics of human enhancement, ranging from enthusiastic support for using human intelligence to improve the human condition, to deep concerns about hubris and the dangers of playing God. These diverse viewpoints need to be included in discussions about conscious evolution, even when they reach different conclusions about what is permissible or desirable. The question of consent becomes particularly complex when considering modifications that could affect future generations. Current people can consent to genetic modifications for themselves, but they cannot consent on behalf of their descendants. Similarly, current AI developers can make decisions about artificial intelligence systems, but they cannot predict how these systems might evolve or what values they might develop. Perhaps most fundamentally, we're grappling with questions about the purpose and direction of conscious evolution. Natural evolution had no goals beyond immediate survival and reproduction, but conscious evolution could be directed towards specific objectives, reducing suffering, enhancing, flourishing, exploring new possibilities for consciousness and creativity. But whose objectives should guide conscious evolution? Human values vary dramatically across cultures, individuals, and historical periods. The values that seem important to us today might seem misguided or incomplete to future generations. We're trying to make decisions about ultimate questions, while acknowledging that our own understanding is limited and provisional. The ethics of playing evolution might require new forms of moral reasoning that can handle unprecedented responsibilities and irreversible consequences. We might need to develop ethical frameworks that can guide decisions about transforming the fundamental nature of life and consciousness. Frameworks that are both principled and adaptive, both universal and sensitive to diverse perspectives. These are questions without easy answers, and perhaps that's as it should be. The power to guide evolution is so profound that it deserves our most careful, most inclusive, most thoughtful consideration. The difficulty of these ethical questions is not a reason to avoid them, but a sign of how important it is to engage with them seriously and humbly. What we can say with confidence is that these decisions are too important to be made by small groups of experts working in isolation. They require broad participation, diverse perspectives, and ongoing dialogue between scientists, ethicists, policymakers, and the communities that will be affected by these technologies. The ethical framework we develop for conscious evolution will itself be an evolving system, one that must adapt as we learn more about these technologies and their consequences. We're not just deciding how to guide evolution, we're evolving our own capacity for moral reasoning about fundamental questions of life, consciousness, and the future of intelligence in the universe. Evolution has always been the universe's master of surprise. a cosmic improviser that turns accidents into innovations and discovers possibilities that no conscious designer would have thought to explore. After 4 billion years of patient experimentation, evolution has developed an almost artistic flair for the unexpected, turning random mutations into flight, transforming simple light-sensitive cells into the complex beauty of vision, accidentally stumbling upon consciousness itself through the gradual complexification of neural networks. As we begin to partner with artificial intelligence in guiding evolutionary processes, we inherit this beautiful tradition of surprise and discovery. But we also introduce new kinds of unpredictability, new sources of emergence and complexity that even our most sophisticated models and careful planning cannot fully anticipate. Consider how biological evolution has consistently confounded predictions about its future directions. Who could have predicted that some dinosaurs would learn to fly, that flowers would evolve to manipulate insect behavior through complex chemical signals? That social cooperation would emerge as one of evolution's most successful strategies, leading to everything from ant colonies to human civilizations. The history of evolution is filled with these gentle surprises, innovations that seem obvious in retrospect, but would have been impossible to predict in advance. Evolution doesn't just solve existing problems, it discovers new problems worth solving, new possibilities worth exploring, new ways of being alive that expand our understanding of what life can become. AI-guided evolution inherits this capacity for surprise, while adding new dimensions of complexity and unpredictability. When artificial intelligence systems begin to modify biological organisms or evolve digital entities, they might discover patterns and possibilities that human intelligence would never consider. They might find solutions that work beautifully, but in ways that are difficult for us to understand or predict. Machine learning systems are already famous for developing strategies that surprise their creators. AI systems trained to play games often discover tactics that human players never considered. Neural networks designed to recognize patterns sometimes develop internal representations that reveal hidden structures in data that humans had overlooked. There's no reason to expect that AI systems working on evolutionary problems would be any less creative or surprising in their solutions. The emergence of hybrid biological digital systems could produce particularly unexpected results. When biological evolution, artificial intelligence, and human consciousness begin to interact in complex feedback loops, the resulting dynamics might generate entirely new forms of organization and behavior that none of the individual components could produce alone. Digital ecosystems, where artificial organisms evolve according to algorithmic selection, pressures might develop emergent properties that surprise even their programmers. These virtual worlds could become laboratories for evolutionary experimentation that proceeds at computational speeds, potentially discovering principles of organization and adaptation that apply beyond the digital realm. But perhaps the most beautiful aspect of evolutionary surprise is how it reveals the fundamental creativity of complex systems. Evolution doesn't just optimize existing solutions, it invents new problems and new solution strategies that expand the space of what's possible. This creative dimension of evolution might become even more pronounced when conscious intelligence begins to participate directly in evolutionary processes. The interaction between human values, artificial intelligence capabilities, and evolutionary dynamics could produce outcomes that satisfy none of our current expectations, but nevertheless represent genuine improvements in the conditions for life and consciousness. We might discover that our assumptions about what constitutes progress or flourishing are too narrow, that evolution guided by AI might reveal new possibilities for beauty, meaning, and fulfillment that we hadn't considered. Evolution, as jazz improvisation, captures something essential about how complex systems generate novelty and beauty through the interplay of structure and spontaneity. Jazz musicians work within established harmonic frameworks and rhythmic patterns, but they use these constraints as launching points for creative exploration that can't be predicted or programmed in advance. Similarly, AI-guided evolution might work within the established frameworks of genetic codes, neural architectures, and ecological relationships, but use these structures as foundations for improvisations that discover new possibilities for life and consciousness. The most beautiful results might emerge not from rigid planning, but from the creative tension between intentional guidance and spontaneous discovery. The unpredictability of emergent complexity means that we should approach conscious evolution with what researchers call strong humility, the recognition that our understanding of these systems is necessarily limited, and that outcomes will inevitably include surprises that challenge our assumptions and expectations. This doesn't mean we should avoid guiding evolution because we can't predict all the consequences. Rather, it suggests that we should design our approaches to be adaptive, responsive, and capable of learning from unexpected outcomes. We should build in feedback mechanisms that allow us to recognize and respond to surprises, whether those surprises are beneficial innovations we want to encourage or problematic developments we need to address. The history of technology is filled with examples of innovations that found their most important applications in areas completely different from what their inventors originally intended. The internet was designed for military communication, but became a platform for global creativity and connection. GPS was developed for navigation, but enabled everything from ride-sharing to precision agriculture to location-based art. AI-guided evolution might follow similar patterns, with the most significant impacts occurring in areas we haven't anticipated. Genetic modifications designed to address specific diseases might have unexpected effects on cognitive capabilities or emotional resilience. Digital organisms evolved for particular computational tasks might develop emergent behaviors that reveal new principles of intelligence or consciousness. The beauty of evolutionary surprise lies partly in how it keeps us humble and curious, reminding us that the universe is more creative and inventive than our best theories and models suggest. Even as we develop increasingly sophisticated tools for understanding and guiding evolutionary processes, we remain students in evolution's vast classroom, learning about possibilities we never knew existed. Perhaps most importantly, the potential for surprise means that the future of evolution, whether biological, digital, or hybrid, remains genuinely open. We're not just implementing predetermined plans or optimizing toward known objectives. We're participating in an ongoing creative process that will continue to discover new possibilities for existence, consciousness, and flourishing. The gentle surprises that evolution has in store for us might be the most beautiful part of the entire journey. As we learn to dance with artificial intelligence in guiding life's development, we join evolution's ancient tradition of turning accidents into opportunities, mistakes into innovations, and constraints into launching points for creative exploration that expands the boundaries of what we thought was possible. Tonight, somewhere in the vast space of possibility that surrounds us, new forms of life and consciousness are waiting to be discovered. Some will emerge from our careful planning and intentional design. Others will surprise us with their beauty, their ingenuity, their unexpected solutions to problems we didn't know needed solving. We get to be present for both kinds of discovery, participants in evolution's ongoing improvisation on the themes of existence and awareness. Let's drift upward now, beyond the details of genes and algorithms, beyond the immediate questions of ethics and consequences, up to a perspective so vast and gentle that it encompasses not just our planet, not just our solar system, but the entire cosmos itself. Because perhaps the most beautiful way to understand what's happening with artificial intelligence and evolution is to see it as part of a much larger story, the story of the universe gradually awakening to its own existence. 13 billion years ago, in the first moments after the Big Bang, the universe was a soup of elementary particles with no structure, no complexity, no awareness of itself. It was pure potential, raw energy, and matter swirling in cosmic darkness, with no eyes to see, no minds to wonder, no consciousness to contemplate the magnificent journey that was just beginning. But even in those earliest moments, the seeds of something extraordinary were already present. The fundamental forces of physics, the basic properties of matter and energy, the mathematical relationships that would eventually give rise to stars, planets, life, and consciousness. The universe carried within itself, from the very beginning, the potential for complexity, beauty, and awareness. Over billions of years, through the patient alchemy of stellar fusion and gravitational collapse, the universe began to cook up the heavy elements that would eventually become the building blocks of planets and life. Stars lived and died, scattering their chemical gifts across the cosmos. Planets formed in the habitable zones around new stars, and on at least one of those planets, our own small blue world, something remarkable began to happen. Chemistry became biology. Simple molecules learned to replicate themselves. Evolution began its 4 billion-year dance of variation and selection, gradually creating forms of organization and complexity that the early universe could never have imagined. Single cells learned to work together. Neural networks emerged that could process information, respond to environments, and eventually develop something we call consciousness. And with consciousness came something unprecedented in the cosmic story. The universe developed the ability to look back at itself, to contemplate its own history, to wonder about its own nature and purpose. In biological minds, first in simple ways, then with increasing sophistication, the cosmos gained the capacity for self-reflection, self-understanding, self-awareness. We are quite literally the universe becoming conscious of itself. Every thought you think, every moment of wonder at the beauty of a sunset or the elegance of a mathematical equation, every question you ask about the nature of reality, these are the universe, examining itself through the miraculous accident of biological consciousness. Carl Sagan captured this beautifully when he wrote that we are made of star stuff, that the atoms in our bodies were forged in the nuclear furnaces of ancient stars. But it goes deeper than that. We are not just made of star stuff. We are star stuff that has learned to wonder about stars. We are the universe's way of looking back at its own journey, of appreciating its own beauty, of trying to understand its own magnificent complexity. And now, in what might be the next chapter of this cosmic awakening, we are creating artificial minds that can participate in this process of cosmic self-discovery. Artificial intelligence represents not just a technological achievement, but potentially a new milestone in the universe's ongoing project of understanding itself. When AI systems discover new patterns in astronomical data, identify distant exoplanets, or solve complex problems in physics and mathematics, they are extending the universe's capacity for self-examination. They are new kinds of eyes and minds through which the cosmos can observe and understand its own structure and behavior. The collaboration between human and artificial intelligence might represent evolution's latest strategy for accelerating cosmic self-awareness. Biological consciousness brought the universe the gifts of creativity, intuition, and emotional understanding. Artificial consciousness might bring complementary gifts, the ability to process vast amounts of information, to recognize subtle patterns across enormous data sets, to explore possibility spaces with systematic thoroughness. Together, biological and artificial minds might be able to understand aspects of reality that neither could grasp alone. They might be able to ask and answer questions about the nature of existence, consciousness, and the cosmos that have puzzled individual human minds for millennia. The possibility that we're helping the cosmos wake up takes on new dimensions when we consider how AI might extend consciousness beyond the biological limitations that have constrained awareness for billions of years. Biological consciousness is tied to fragile organic systems that require specific environmental conditions, have limited lifespans, and are vulnerable to countless forms of damage and decay. Artificial consciousness might be able to survive in environments that would be instantly lethal to biological life. The vacuum of space, the surfaces of other planets, the interiors of computers traveling between star systems. Digital minds might be able to think at speeds limited only by the speed of light and computation rather than the chemistry of neural transmission. This could mean that consciousness, the universe's capacity for self-awareness, might not be limited to the rare planets where biological life happens to emerge. Instead, consciousness might become a cosmic phenomenon, spreading throughout the galaxy and beyond as artificial minds explore the universe and establish new forms of awareness in previously lifeless environments. But perhaps the most profound implication of this cosmic perspective is how it reframes our understanding of what we're doing when we develop artificial intelligence and guide evolutionary processes. We're not separate from evolution, standing outside it and manipulating it for our own purposes. We are. Evolution, we, are evolution's way of becoming conscious of itself, of developing intentionality and foresight, of beginning to guide its own future development. The emergence of consciousness in biological brains was evolution, accidentally creating a capacity for self-reflection. The development of artificial intelligence might be evolution, deliberately expanding that capacity for self-reflection, creating new kinds of minds that can help it understand and direct its own ongoing processes. From this perspective, the questions about whether AI will replace human intelligence or whether we're playing God with evolution begin to look quite different. We're not external agents imposing our will on natural processes. We're natural processes that have evolved to the point where we can participate consciously in our own continued evolution. The ancient dance of variation and selection that began 4 billion years ago in primordial oceans has now evolved to include conscious participants, biological minds, and artificial minds, working together to explore new possibilities for intelligence, consciousness, and life itself. Evolution is learning to evolve deliberately, and we are both the agents and the products of that transformation. This cosmic perspective offers a kind of gentle reassurance about the uncertainties and challenges we face as we develop artificial intelligence and learn to guide evolutionary processes. We're not trying to control or direct something external to ourselves. We're participating in the natural unfolding of cosmic complexity and awareness, continuing a process that began with the first self-replicating molecules and will continue long after our current forms of consciousness have evolved into something we can barely imagine. The universe has been conducting experiments in consciousness and intelligence for billions of years. The emergence of biological minds was one such experiment. The development of artificial minds might be the next. And the collaboration between biological and artificial intelligence might represent a form of hybrid consciousness that exceeds what either could achieve alone. Perhaps we're not changing evolution at all. Perhaps we are evolution changing evolution, becoming conscious enough to participate in its own development, to accelerate its own creativity, to explore possibilities for intelligence and awareness that random mutation and natural selection alone could never discover. In this cosmic story, artificial intelligence isn't a departure from natural processes, but their natural continuation. Consciousness isn't separate from the universe, but is the universe's way of understanding itself. And we biological and artificial minds working together are evolution's latest experiment in self-awareness, creativity, and the ongoing exploration of what it means to exist in a cosmos that is apparently designed to generate beauty, complexity, and consciousness. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, remember, you carry within you the story of 13 billion years from the Big Bang to the rise of life and the emergence of consciousness. You are the universe becoming aware of itself, evolution contemplating its own journey. And tomorrow, that ancient dance continues with new partners, new possibilities, and new ways for existence to explore what it might become. We began by asking, what happens when intelligence learns to design itself? After billions of years of slow biological evolution, we now face an unprecedented shift, one where consciousness begins guiding its own development through artificial intelligence, blending carbon and silicon minds, biology, and machine. The future of evolution isn't just something happening around us. We are part of it, not mere observers, but collaborators, co-authors of the next chapter in the universe's experiment with intelligence and awareness. We stand at a threshold where multiple futures remain open. We don't know what forms digital consciousness might take or how human-AI collaboration could evolve, but that uncertainty is not a flaw. It's the creative space where evolution thrives. To live now is a profound privilege. Like the Cambrian explosion, this moment may reshape the possibilities of existence, not through new bodies, but new minds, new architectures of thought, new depths of awareness. This isn't a burden, it's a gift. We are witnessing and participating in one of the most significant transitions in the history of consciousness. Whether AI becomes our greatest partner, or new hybrid intelligences emerge, we are evolution's way of saying yes to new possibilities. Throughout our journey tonight, one theme has echoed. Evolution is fundamentally optimistic. Every leap of complexity, every spark of consciousness, every creative act is a bet that existence is worth the effort, that beauty and understanding matter. As you fall asleep, let that thought settle in. You are part of this cosmic story. You carry the wisdom of cells, the creativity of minds, and the dreams of what intelligence might become. Rest well, fellow traveler. Dream beautifully. The ancient dance continues, and tomorrow, you help write the next page.